Photography to me is catching a moment which is passing and which is true. I have never taken a picture for any other reason than that at that moment it made me happy to do so. Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio, and I'm riding alone today for episode 148. And right off the bat, I'll let you know that this is going to be a rerun episode. It's been, the end of November and the Thanksgiving holidays, and just work has gotten me crazy, and I've been unable actually to set something up with Ward and get an original show together today. And my goal is for the next two shows in December, I will get some original content. But, Thanksgiving and turkey and people coming over and cleaning up the house and stuff. So I just did, and work. Actually, my work schedule has been not what I expected it to be. It's a bit long. So, I have to do stuff early, either very early in the morning or really late at night. Right now I'm recording this, it's like almost 11 o'clock at night. Anyway, that's sort of my long reason for saying that don't have an original show for you today, but I'm going to replay one of the more popular shows that we made. And actually Ward and I made this show about Lartigue. And I realized actually as I was thinking about this today that I'm going to rerun this show. And I went through the archives and I noticed that actually in February 2020, I reran this show as well. But it even in the rerun, it happened to be one of the more popular shows. And so I thought I would post it today. For some reason, Lartigue was always one of those photographers I've always enjoyed. And so I'm really hoping that you guys don't mind me rerunning the show. And for any of you new listeners, if you just, signed up for the show in 2020 or 2021, you probably didn't hear this episode unless you went back to the archives and listened. But I figured I'd rerun it. And as I'm realizing, I'm looking at the show notes from the show when I originally posted it. When did I post it? I don't know if I have the date here. Yeah. End of April 2019. And I think this was one of the first shows that Ward and I did as a, sort of me teaming up with somebody else to talk about photographers. And in fact, I'm looking at the show notes and I wrote, and this is a quote, this is the first of what will be, it's the first one. So this is the first of what will be a regular feature on Street Shots. The idea of talking about interesting and exceptional photographers with a buddy has been something I wanted to do for the show for a long time now. So any feedback is appreciated. So this might be the first one that Ward and I did. And I think possibly this is where I got the seed, Ward, by the way, you're probably listening to that. I got the seed of maybe having Ward as as the co-host on the show. Would be a great thing. And I think after listening to this show again, I realized we had a really good energy with the both of us talking about, especially photographers who we both really admired and enjoyed. So anyway, this is just a bit of an intro to episode, what is this? I think it was 96 from, 96 from April 29th, 2019. And yes, this original show was one of our more popular shows, and the rerun in February of 2020 was also a popular show. So let's make this one a popular show. But anyway, forgive me for not coming up with a new episode this end of November 2021. But we're working on stuff for the next two shows, and the end of December of this year will be the 150th episode. So I can't make that a rerun. We'll have to figure something out for that show. I don't have everything necessarily planned, but we'll get something together in the next couple of weeks and make sure we record it and have a 150th show. I can't believe I'm getting close to 150 shows. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying them. So anyway, without any further ado, please enjoy this rerun of Lost in Lartigue. Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio, and welcome to episode 96 for the end of April 2019. And I have a special guest with me tonight, my friend Ward Rosin. Hi, Ward.
Hi. Maybe I'm not that special.
Well, you are. You're very special.
Oh, great.
I didn't want to get too much into an intro because I want to spend more time talking, but basically I asked Ward to join me tonight because I wanted to do something on this show that I don't think I've done. I might have done in like sort of my own like walking meditations and talking episodes, but sort of a deep dive on a photographer. And I've done something like this similar on Shutter Time with Mac, Sid and Mac. I think it was one with Mac. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do it a little bit differently, but I really wanted to just talk about, I wanted to talk about photographers that I think people should, or at least people who are listening to this show, should know about, or at least hear about what I think of this photographer and maybe what you think and whoever is on the show. But
Absolutely.
And so thanks for joining me on this first version of this, Ward.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah. And I decided, it's my show.
That's right.
I wanted to talk about a photographer. His name is Jacques-Henri Lartigue, and I probably butchered that, but
we do our best.
Yeah, and I wanted to, dive into this photographer a little bit and hopefully get the audience, you guys in the audience, to appreciate and maybe go out and seek his work out and maybe fall in love with it like me and Ward have. So,
sure.
But Ward, thank you for helping me with this.
No, it's no problem at all.
And I picked you, but I asked you because I know you have a pretty extensive knowledge of photographers.
Well, I like to think that.
Yeah, well, you hang out in a place called the Camera Store, right?
Yeah. Well, you'll find holes in the knowledge. There's plenty to miss there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lartigue. And another reason for us to talk about him, get other people interested, is that there are more of us to be able to talk about guys like him, because he's definitely worth the time. And there's a kind of a glow around him. He was a kind of a one of a kind. His background really set him up for some of the stuff.
Yeah, so does. I'm going to come out and be honest with you about this. This guy has not been on my radar for a very, very long time. And he was on my radar in college. And what got me into at least one of his pictures was, and it was probably a history of photography class that I was taking, and we probably had to write essays on him. And there was one picture, it might have been in my photography history book, the History of Photography by Beaumont Newhall.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I still have, by the way. It was my text, and I think it was my second year in college, and the thing was so dense, I just couldn't get through it. It was just like,
He's a filmmaker, too. He did lots of films, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk about him at some point in the future.
Sure.
But I'm pretty sure in that book there's a shot of Lartigue's of a race car. And what's unique about this image is that the picture is very distorted, and the race car is sort of bent and speeding off the frame to the right, and the spectators are bent and leaning off to the left. And for some reason, I remember it striking me as something. And then I think when we had to write an essay, I chose that picture. And I have no idea what I wrote about it. Mm-hmm. And I must have it someplace in my house, I hope. Maybe I'll find it one day and dig it up and see what it says. Probably ridiculous. But he's been on my radar for a while. And I don't follow that many photographers from the past all the time. And I've just started getting into it since I've been doing the podcast and just sort of getting my own book collection. And then recently I found this podcast, a YouTube channel by this guy, Ted Forbes, called The Art of Photography.
Yeah, he does a lot of good stuff.
Do you subscribe to him?
I sure do, yeah.
Yeah, I've only listened to three or four episodes, and I found them I really liked them. So, and he brought up a color book from Lartigue, which I had no idea that Lartigue was shooting color. And so that sort of got me sparked into it again. I immediately bought this book from Amazon called Lartigue Life in Color.
It
was a catalog from a show, I believe. After listening to the YouTube channel and looking and buying this book, which was ridiculously cheap, it was $24 on Amazon, and that was like a no-brainer to buy. I bought it and I did my reading, at least about his color work, and suddenly it was like, wow, where was this guy? And then I'm digging back into the past and looking at all of his black and white work.
Yep. No, and, he's something.
Yeah. Well, tell me, how did you find him?
Well, I'm kind of like a broken record because I talk about my first exposure to photography education being the Time Life Library of Photography that my mother got me when I was 11, and they're these big, I don't know, 12-inch by 12-inch silver volumes, and they're all about 3/4 of an inch or half an inch thick.
Did you get them like once a month?
Once a month, yeah, I got them, and I couldn't wait to get the next one and the next one. And Lartigue, that same Lartigue picture that you have, or that you were talking about, I had too, and it went into the theory of how that particular image was created. Mm-hmm. And I did, as a kid, I didn't do much research, but I knew the name Lartigue, and I associated him with that image. And then as I, grew up and had a dark room and all that kind of stuff, then I would find, there was a book that came out, I think in the 60s or 70s that I saw. And when the web came, it was great because there are all these older images, and he's revered in France where he was born, and the museums and the French government hold him in high esteem, and they display his work. And it's on the web, and it's there for everybody to enjoy now.
Yeah.
So that was my exposure to Lartigue, but like you, the color book I had no idea about until I saw the volume in the camera store. Now you were saying off air that it came out quite a while ago, right? That color book.
Well, hang on.
Or did
I want to say quite a while. Let me just look. No, it's not that long ago.
Okay.
I'm looking at the book was published. The book accompanies the exhibition organized at the museum in Paris from June 24th to August 23rd, 2015.
Okay.
So not that long ago. I'm sorry. But I mean, it's, that's already 4 years ago.
Yeah. Well, time flies for sure.
Yeah. As I started to do more research in him specifically for this show, because believe me, I didn't know anything about him except what I read in the color book. And I started to look at his work and realized the dude liked speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to go back to that picture again, the one that we're both talking about, the race car picture. He took that when he was 18. Mm-hmm. And I want to get a little geeky here for a second, because part of the strength of that picture is the distortions. Mm-hmm. And I think when he took the picture, I don't know if he was doing it if he was working for a magazine or he wanted to publish it, but I don't think the picture went over too well because of the distortions.
Oh, he was disappointed. I read that he was very disappointed in himself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine, like you're exploring this relatively new technology, these cameras and stuff like that, and you're trying to record reality, and you get this thing that comes out distorted, and it must be, I could see it being a disappointment. And then, add on, 70 years, 60 years as we're all starting to look at his work, and we're like, whoa, that's genius.
Yeah.
And
you know what? I wonder if that leaning forward wheel is ended up being an inspiration to cartoonists, because when you see those cars, or you see some animation, the car's leaning forward and the wheel's drawn as an oval, and I'm just wondering if this unintentionally became a symbol of speed for the last century, right?
That. Oh, you know what? I would probably put money on that. One cartoonist saw that and said, "Oh, this is how I'm going to do this," and then someone else followed it. And yeah.
Yeah, so, it's definitely it's a symbol of speed. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. So the technical part of it that I learned is just because he was doing a slightly long exposure or using slow film, and he was panning the camera while the car was moving, and the kind of shutter, I think it was a leaf shutter, in that camera had traveled from the bottom of the film to the top.
Right. And
there was a little slot in it. A slit, and that's how it exposed the film. And I'll put a link in the show notes. So someone actually made an animation of how that would work. But once you see the physics of it, how the motion of the camera and the way the car was moving and the way the shutter was moving, you can see how the distortion was created.
Yeah.
And today, what's very similar, the quick example is that a rolling shutter. And a lot of the cameras now they're using, or like cell phone cameras, or even mirrorless cameras. If you wave your camera left and right too fast, you'll get what someone calls a jelly cam.
Yeah.
Things look like jello.
Yeah.
But because the sensor is acting in a similar way, it's scanning from top to bottom. I think it's top to bottom on a sensor. That you get that same kind of effect if you move your camera too fast, especially with the older cameras. I think newer digital cameras, have software that tries to compensate for that.
Right.
I don't think it can fix it completely, but it's very similar. So I remember when I got my first digital camera, or maybe not my first digital camera, but when I first started noticing rolling shutter, I was like, oh, this is Lartigue.
Yeah.
This is our version of Lartigue. But anyway, that's the geeky part. I don't want to get too geeky about this. But
I mean, just discovering the technology and going back to what the camera was capable of, and this disappointment/discovery that he had, is a pretty good pan. Like, I do some motorsport photography myself, and the flex and the imperfections and the rivets on the car and the tread on the tires that are strapped to the back of the car, relatively sharp. So in terms of like my understanding of shooting motorsports, it was a good pan. Like, he got the subject to hold still while he was panning.
Do you think he was I mean, this is kind of a stretch, but do you think he's one of the first to actually to do that, to be actually panning the camera while things were moving? Or, I mean, someone must have done that before.
Yeah, possibly, but he's the first, one that we know of any notoriety. So I'm happy to live with that.
Yeah, let's put that on our.
Yeah, well, let's say it's all about Lartigue.
Yeah. As I'm going through his pictures, right? First of all, he's got the black and white and the color, and they're kind of, related and they're different, but the black and white. Well, let me stop for a second before we go into the pictures. Yep. One of the things I got into, and I think you'll probably resonate with this guy got into photography at a young age.
Really young. Like, really insanely young.
Yeah. And his dad, he was in a rich family, right? Mm-hmm. And his dad was able to buy him camera gear, or at least he was able to own this stuff.
Yeah.
And, I think of myself. I mean, I wasn't growing up in a rich family, but I had a camera. I got him young, and I'm sure you did too.
Yeah,
right?
11. I was 11.
11, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go a little earlier than what grade are you in 11th grade? I mean, 11.
11 years old. I would have been going into the 6th grade.
Oh, so you and me are we're roughly the same age.
Yeah.
And I think that was about the time when I got my first camera. It was a Polaroid land camera.
Okay, I didn't have Polaroids till 7th grade.
Wow.
So, and I still have a couple of them.
Really? Well, you have to share some pictures of that with me. I got to see those things.
Well, I somehow or other, I have a first generation tan colored SX70. It's so beautiful.
Oh, really? Does it still work?
Yeah. Yeah, it still works, but I can't find it. I hid it away somewhere.
Oh, no.
And then I got the Sonar one-step one, which was not the one-step. I think they call it. It's the black version of the same camera that has the sonar. It's still the folding version, but it has the sonar autofocus. I know,
with the big dish in front of it.
The big gold thing.
Yeah.
So I still have that one.
He's when I started looking at his stuff, and I'm realizing he's like kind of taking the same kind of pictures that I did when I was a kid. Like my first pictures, like the first shot that when I did the Google search. One of the first shots that popped up was this black cat in midair grabbing something, or trying to grab something. And it's a cat, right?
It's a cat. Trust you to find a cat picture.
I know. Trust me, in the age of internet, looking at Lartigue from who knows what I can't remember what year this is, but it's certainly,
the teens. It'd be in the teens somewhere, I'm sure. If he shot it when he was a kid.
Right. It's a shot of this cat in midair flying. So I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is, I'm with this guy.
Yeah.
Now, I think he's, I'm attached to cats, so I'm taking pictures of my cats. I think this guy's attached to motion.
Yeah.
And exploring stuff. Of course, for him, photography is young back then, and the camera gear is, relatively, primitive is not the right word, but you know what I mean? It
was, well, the what do you want to call it? The hobby, the method of expression was still sort of, I guess, at least action photography. This was the cameras that he was using were kind of the first that were capable of capturing it. So in that way, he's a real pioneer. I mean, even as a kid.
And what kind of camera do you know? What he might have been using?
Well, he
Stop
had
action?
to stop action. I think he might have been. I mean, the cat picture, I'd imagine, would be taken with that box brownie that he had.
Oh, he's right. He had a brownie, right?
He had a brownie. Well, we start from the beginning. The first camera he got is what I would call a banquet camera, a very large glass plate camera that would be, 12 inches by 18-inch glass plate. And the story is that it was so big that he had to stand on a stool to operate it. And I figured,
how cute is that?
that would be, okay, everyone line up here. We're going to expose a glass plate with a 7-year-old kid shooting. So I'm just wondering if that didn't go over so well. The next year, I think for his birthday, he got a Kodak Brownie.
Kodak Brownie. And that was the camera did they already pre-fill that with film and then you would send the camera?
No, I think the Brownie, that was just called the Kodak. Someone will probably get after me, but I think starting with the number ones, maybe the number one was the one that had the 100 roll or the 100 image roll. Right. I think the number two had 120 film,
and you would fill that yourself. Oh.
Yeah, you would, and you would get, they'd be 6:9 negative. You'd get.
Wow. Yeah. I'm looking at the shot. It looks like it was. I mean, it's sharp. The cat is frozen in midair. It could have been taken today, I think.
Yeah.
And, he took it as a kid. And so, again, as I go through the work, the way Google sort of throws everything on the screen, it's all kind of not in any order. But, a shot of a woman jumping down some stairs and she's caught.
Yeah, that one is amazing. It looks like she's going to go down on her head. She's moving so swiftly that it's like, and she's like 1.5 feet above the stairs. It's like she was going down 3 steps at a time.
And she's in this Victorian dress, right? Yeah. With these puffy sleeves and this like kind of, I don't know how she's going to do it. We don't know the end of that picture.
Yeah, we don't know. And it's gravel at the bottom of those steps. And she's going to miss the welcome mat and everything. She's going down. Oh, but I mean, what's unusual and special about that picture in particular, and some of the other ones of women that he shot in that era, is you don't see this kind of life and vibrancy in the people or in photography or painting or anything in that age, in that era. Nobody's
smiling back then in paintings.
No. No, and it, like the cat picture, it feels very modern. It's sort of like, we dressed up in these Victorian things and we took pictures of us messing around, jumping around the at the mansion or whatever. And this is what this looks like. It's a living thing. It's in a way, it's sort of timeless.
In some way, I mean, I hate to say this. Well, maybe I don't really hate to say it, but I mean, there are snapshots of life behind the scenes, behind the backyard where people let themselves loose a little bit, and it's very refreshing to see these pictures because, I can see the idea of that time period is, we have these paintings and formal portraits of people and everybody was really dour and, and black and white doesn't really help that, it makes
Are you gray? Are you more gray or less gray?
Right, everybody looks just old and bothered, Yeah. And anytime I see photographs like this, it just tickles me, and it reminds me that people are people today and they were people then, and we all put on our sort of formal faces and then we have our good times and whatnot. So, I mean, a couple of the other, I just grabbed a whole bunch of shots and I'm not sure if I can put all these in the show notes because I don't know what the restrictions are, but I'll probably put a few in there. People in a go-kart spinning out, in a dirt field.
That is cool.
That's insane. It's like there's something crazy about it, and they look so casual. That's the thing is like their faces are this guy's driving. It looks like this flatbed something.
Yeah, it looks fun, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, let's do that. I don't know if it has an engine on it. I think these were go-karts, so somehow they must have been pushed or maybe go down a hill or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's spinning out in this dirt field, and the woman next to him, she's just sort of making a face. But what's great about it is the action is stopped.
Yeah. All the gravel's up in the air, and it's frozen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, he has got a lot of racing cars. He's got another shot of a woman in what also is a go-kart wiping out.
Yeah.
And she's smiling as she's doing it.
Yeah, she couldn't make the corner. She was afraid she was going to go spearing off into the creek bed there, it looks like. And she decided to bail.
So I wonder what really drew him to, I mean, you take pictures, you like pictures of automobiles. I know you photographed them, and the book you did on the rodeo. Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of action pictures. What to maybe understand him a little bit? Maybe I can understand you a little bit. Like, what drew you to the action? What's the pull?
In freezing action, you are there's the experience of speed when you're in the middle of it, and then there's an experience for a viewer capturing it. And what's interesting about Lartigue and what, we're talking about panning the camera and that sort of thing. My favorite pictures of race cars are that I've taken, at least when they're on the track, is to pan them and have a slow enough shutter speed that the background is blurred and the car is sharp. Mm-hmm. Because if you have a high shutter speed, then it freezes and then there's no life in it at all.
Right. It's just
it's like it's parked.
Yeah.
The car could just be parked and the wheels aren't blurred spinning and all that sort of thing. What Lartigue is doing for us here is he probably doesn't have a range of shutter speeds. I mean, I don't know if it was taken with his Graflex or his ICA reflex camera. He does have, in fact, I think the ICA, even in the old days, it had a shutter speed of a high shutter speed of 1,000th of a second because it had such a narrow slit. Yeah. If you look up the ICA camera company from Germany, they had in the teens and the 20s, they had a huge myriad of different kind of cameras, up to those giant banquet cameras down to these tiny, what became 35 millimeters. So it's very cool. So, but anyway, I'm digressing.
Well, wait, one second. But as long as you digress for a second, why do they call it a banquet camera?
They used it in formal locations like in halls and banquets. It was not. It was on usually it was put on an oak table, sort of like those oak dinner sets that you can buy. That's, I don't know, for your kitchen or whatever. This giant oak table, and the camera would be either built into it or. Really? Put it up. Okay. The table came with the camera because it was so big and heavy, and you would it's not really appropriate, but the movie The Shining, where the photographer is taking a picture of the whole group of people in that banquet at that hotel, the Overlook Hotel, and was taken with this giant view camera, and that's basically what they called them. It was a colloquial term. That's my understanding of what a banquet camera was. Just a large view camera
that sits on a table and takes.
Yeah, and you could jack it up or attach it to something else, but typically they were down at a table level or above, or you could elevate it and shoot large groups in halls and things. So where were we? We're talking about about Lartigue and what I like about the go-kart. Let's just talk for a second. Continue talking about the go-kart picture. He has frozen everything in that image, so there's no panning like there was in that Grand Prix picture, that other picture, the first one we were talking about. Here he has frozen everything, but there's so much going on with the gravel and dirt being spun up and the expressions on everyone's face. And there's three women off to the side that are watching this spectacle, and there's definitely a feeling like this car is moving. It's certainly not parked.
Right, because of the action. I mean, there's stuff going on. When you were talking about before, is like when you photograph something like, say, a race car or even like a football player, they're frozen in time.
Yeah.
They can look like a statue or, like you said, parked and stuff like that. And you don't really get any sense of speed, although maybe that's not the point of the picture. The point of the picture is like what this being or machine it looks like and what it's doing.
Yeah.
But he's sort of combining them in this kind of shot where he's getting you said the gravel coming up and even just their faces.
Yeah, they're grimacing a little bit. Yeah. He's busy driving. She's probably holding on to her seat. They wouldn't have seat belts. I doubt they'd have seat belts in those days. And she's just hanging on to the seat, and she looks like she's sort of enjoying it, I think. It's sort of like, Mother, it's your turn. Come on, let's go. Right.
And the thing is, to go back to this for a second, this go-kart shot, he's wearing not a tuxedo, but he's got a bow tie on and everybody's dressed very proper, and the two things don't seem to go together.
No.
This is the kind of thing like kids wear short pants and baseball hats, and they grab a go-kart and they, fly down the hill, and they look, stupid. And these are very proper people sitting upright, and they have good posture.
Yeah.
They're about to wipe out.
Very important.
Yeah. And so, I go through all the shots, or a lot of the black and white, not every black and white, but, he loved to capture pictures of flying, things that were flying. And he was at the time when flight was just sort of starting, and he was in France too. So There was a lot of people playing around with flying instruments then.
Yeah.
And
kites too. He took pictures of kiting competitions too.
Did he? I haven't seen any of those shots. Oh.
Yeah. Well, it's in his bio. I think I might have seen one picture of kites, but
well, anyway. He's got this one shot of a glider. I think it's a glider, and it looks like there's two guys holding on to it, or at least one guy holding on to it, another guy like trying to support the wings, and then in the foreground there's some other guy with a rope attached to it, pulling it into the wind.
Yeah.
And this thing is airborne.
It's
in the picture. It's a beautiful picture.
I know.
It's very such cool. A nice picture. The composition in this, I mean, it's just this thing that happened, right? I mean, he's there with whatever camera he's got. He loves to watch people flying. And the guy in the foreground on the right, the vision of the ground to sky is 1/3 to 2/3. It feels very natural.
Yeah.
This glider is at an angle to the ground, maybe even 30 degrees or something like that.
Yeah.
And then these other little people, these little dots of people around. It's just a beautiful composition. And actually, the more I look at it, the more it just strikes me at how beautiful it is.
Yeah. And the texture of the grass is rendered.
Yeah.
It's all it's very natural. You could smell the wind in the air, like you could the grass, and it's just very live. And that's we could say that's Lartigue. Like he not only captures a moment, but there's a real immediate feeling. Again, the timelessness of it, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it seems like all pictures of gliders and airplanes in that era seem to be canted at that angle. I don't know. It was just
they're either just about to take off or they're just about to crash.
The native instability that they have, right?
And that's not the right word. Not whimsy. There's a. And you gave me that word recently.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's one of the words I don't like.
That's fine. But there's something about it. There's a playfulness is the only other thing I'm coming across. There's nothing very serious about this. I mean, these guys with a glider, and people are just hanging out, and this guy's pulling it, and I might be reading too much into this picture. I don't know if this is not the first flight. This is not like a historic picture of a. Apparently people had gliders for a very long time, so this is nothing new. And maybe this is something rich people did. I mean, he was not, he was well-to-do, so I think he hung out mostly with people of his upbringing.
His class,
His class, yeah. This is what rich people did when they were bored,
Well, yeah, there's something that strikes me about this, too, is the person who's holding on, like you call him the pilot, he's... Mm-hmm. He's hanging off this device, and his legs are kind of all akimbo, like he's just finished running or something, I don't know, and he's hanging from the thing. And then there's another guy kind of holding the wing down,
right,
or getting ready to launch it. I have to think that the pilot would be pretty scared if he ends up getting 20 or 30 feet in the air.
Right, I figure out how to get down.
Yeah, exactly.
If he gets a good wind blast, then what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh,
it's crazy.
I look at even his color and his black and white, or at least the younger stuff, like the stuff that wasn't so posed, and it really gets a sense of this is what we're doing today. This is what everybody's been doing with cameras forever.
Yeah.
And he may not have been the first one, but he's certainly one that has the name to say, look at what we can do with cameras. It's not just about this formal thing that we do with it, and it doesn't have to be static, right?
No.
We can move around and we can have fun. And so it's just looking at his work. It just made me. I think if people go and investigate his work, they're just going to be so happy. About seeing his pictures. But anyway, I wanted to go back. I think I sidetracked for a second, but I wanted to ask you. I don't think I quite got the answer. What is your appeal about photographing things that move fast? Rather than just the process of it, what is it that turns you on about it?
Well, it's time and space and location and all that kind of stuff. When we did the rodeo book with Mark, I don't want to talk about it too much because I always seem to end up going back to that. But it was a commemoration of an event, and it was a 3-day period in time. So the whole book represented that 3-day period. Mm-hmm. Individual photographs represent, the time period that the shutter was open.
Right.
Okay. And when I shoot auto racing, the cars are different year to year. So part of it is a catalog or a history or what's the word I'm looking for? And an example of what the car looked like on that date at that racetrack, and so on. And so there's a kind of an archive aspect to it. There's a historical aspect to it, like this is the car that won, and so on. And so there's that kind of abstract other value of the photographs that have nothing to do with the actual properties of the photograph. So the time that the shutter is open and the you take a picture of the car, it's a different experience of looking at the car in a photograph. If it's really well done, the photograph can stand on its own as a representation of the car when it was on the track. When you're at the racetrack, you're watching it, you're in a dynamic moving system of the race itself or the race weekend where, I really like that car, but it's a moving thing. It's a more ethereal, and you take away memories of the races as them moving around the track. And then when I do the still photography, I'm trying to create something that is a representation of individual cars or a group of cars, whatever it is, and then present them as as its own thing.
Is there anything about the challenge of trying to capture something moving? There is some challenge to it, even if you've done it for a while. Yeah,
there's definitely practice involved, and also auto races in particular, because of the way auto racing is now. Everyone takes the same line on the track because there's the fastest way to get around. They're always going to be in the same place. And it can get very boring. You have to, it's sort of like, oh, I missed him this time. Well, he'll be around in another 1 minute and 43 seconds. So,
so you can
wait till he comes back around and it'll be all good. So there's that. So you need to find, and part of the challenge is you get those shots that you want to get of the actual profile of the car and all that kind of stuff. And then it's like finding different angles. Can I get above the track and shoot down at it? Can I shoot behind it? Yeah. Can I take a creative picture of the cars while they're parked, getting ready to go out on the track and all that kind of stuff? And that just kind of feeds into the experience of being on the race weekend in a still, in still photography. And people do videos and things like that. So it's a different deal.
Well, the videos are you capturing everything. You're not really a moment and stuff like that. But part of it for me, I don't do that. I don't photograph races or anything like that. Well, I'd love to do that though. There's, someday I'd like to get myself onto a track or something. If it's like a horse race or a, drag race, I don't know. Anything with moving things really fast. It'd be really, I know I would not do really well because you need practice to do this. You need to be able to.
But the cars go by every minute and 43 seconds. So
that's
you can practice.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. But, going back to his time, he, thinking of that race with the shot with the distorted wheel, maybe it wasn't quite the same, I got to imagine the thrill then. Not to mention, first of all, the thrill of being at a racetrack, photographing things that are moving fast, which, you're in the early turn of the early 20th century. Yeah. Things generally didn't move that fast.
Nope.
Right. So not like an Ocean Parkway here, which is starting to turn into a drag racing. Oh, I could go down there and I could photograph.
Well, there is that, and I'm sure they would really appreciate you taking pictures of them speeding.
Just I won't get into that. Don't make me crazy. But so he's in a time period where racing is probably new, right? Those guys are wearing leather helmets. They were nuts. Anyway. Won't get into that.
They're still, and in a lot of ways, they're still nuts, even though the cars are a lot safer. But
those guys. Anyway, and then he's on top of that, the photography aspect, which is also kind of new. He's young and stuff like that, and so there's got to be this doubly, triply excitement kind of thing. Someone's driving by. I got this thing called a camera. I'm shooting it. I caught him. Oh, it's all distorted, but it's like I still got it. So. I was going to say my one experience trying to capture things that were moving very fast was at an airfield in Holland. Actually, it was during the time that the Clinton administration was launching the stealth fighters at Yugoslavia to help give what side some help. And I lost track of the sides on that war. But I was at this airfield, and there were stealth fighters and F-16s and Hercules aircraft taking off. and I was at the end of the runway because it was a road and it was perpendicular to the, and they would close the road off, and there was all these other guys, all these other, geeky plane guys there with binoculars and cameras, and I came in with this Nikon 500 millimeter f4 lens, which was humongous. It was the most expensive.
There's a guy who's compensating for something.
Yeah, I know. And everyone was like, "Oh, can we see? Can we see?" And what was really cool is that the planes were coming right at us, right? Yeah. And so I did get time to photograph them because they were coming at me, so they had some time. But when they crossed above me, all bets were off because they were going. By that time, they were going way too fast.
Oh yeah.
Even just taking off, and most of my frames were just like. There's just like the tail of the stealth fighter in the shot because I missed it because it was moving too fast.
Right.
And I realized how much sort of practice I need to be able to like anticipate where things are going to go and understand the speed. So I'm imagining him how much more difficult it was. And well, actually I was shooting with a film camera, so I didn't know what the shots were either.
Right.
Today is easier with digital because then you can instantly get feedback and know what you're doing. But back then I wouldn't know how long he had to wait to get his pictures. To find out whether or not he got the shot. So,
and just thinking about, or kind of changing the subject here about the way he captures life and how vibrant. I keep using that word, but it's just that it's got this living. They have these living qualities about the most of these images. And I'm just wondering if it was his exposure to and practice to photography at an early age. He wasn't saddled with limitations of seeing some others work or being tutored or anything like that. He didn't know that you couldn't take pictures of his sisters and his aunts doing somersaults in the garden. Like those pictures are amazing. Or his father went out in a wader into a pond or something. There's an image of that. Of his dad out in the middle of the water. Like, this is crazy stuff. Like, who takes pictures of this? But I'm happy and thankful that we have them because it was like, oh, this is what life is like. This is what middle class or upper class folks did on the weekend or in the summertime. And I don't know of anybody. I haven't seen pictures like that anywhere else.
There's one shot. I wouldn't say it's particularly remarkable, but it grabbed me. A shot of two people. I don't know if they're sitting in something. One's
like in a car?
It looks like it could be a car. There's a man with goggles on and glasses, and he's smiling, and the woman to his right, or to our right, is cracking up, and there's mountains in the background. And again, it's framed there at the bottom of the frame. There's some mountains in the sky that's kind of washed out.
Yeah.
And I looked at this shot, and I was like, this is what you're talking about, this moment in time, people who are probably very, proper and stuff like that, cracking up about something, and he's there taking the shot, and the energy in it is so visible and relatable. These people don't look like, even though it's in black and white, it doesn't look old at all.
Again, the timelessness quality, I mean, we keep coming back to that, and it's absolutely true.
I mean, he wasn't really discovered until later in life, right?
No, that's right.
This stuff was sort of sitting around, more or less, not being looked at until he was, in his 60s, 70s?
Yeah, I think, he was discovered by the art world, I think, around the world in the early 60s.
Right.
But that Grand Prix picture of the leaning wheel and that he eventually got, I believe that eventually got published. And that was fairly early on. That wasn't too long after that was taken, where he was, a French editor, I believe, said that he was an up and comer, that he was a good photographer. So he had some early notoriety there. And I think within France, people might have known who he was. But the greater art world didn't really know until the 60s, the early 60s. And I think I read in the bio that he had a show at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 63.
Yeah, it was
1963.
I can't remember the guy's name who curated it.
John Sarkovsky?
Yeah. Up until then, I don't think, was he trying to be an artist? I mean, he just looks like he's taking pictures like the rest of us would be taking pictures.
Yeah.
Although he was a painter too, right? So that was part of his
And I think he said he preferred to be known as a painter. But
Right,
I think
right.
his,
Not as a photographer.
the value of his photography kind of overshadowed any of the painting, because I have never seen a Lartigue painting, but maybe that's just my problem or our problem. But
No, he sold a lot of them. He in order to make do later in life, he would make a painting and sell it to like pay the rent or get food and something like that. So they're probably in houses, all scattered around in France. Nobody knows, who's his painting by. Going forward, I'll go forward now. I mean, we talked about his black and white stuff. You know what? His black and white stuff is just great. But like he rubbed elbows somehow with all these very famous people.
Yeah.
A couple of shots I pulled out. One was with John F. Kennedy in 1953.
Yeah.
Kennedy looks great, by the way. He's just sitting there smiling, and he's with. There's two women in the shot. I don't know who they are. I mean, I'm sure what the caption would be. And again, it's just this like slice of life moment. And then there's some color shot of Picasso and a crowd of people. I think they're at a bullfight. And Picasso's in the foreground. And the picture's a little blurry because everybody's sort of moving, or maybe the camera was moving a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's got other shots of Picasso as well. And I was like, wow, you get to rub elbows with some pretty impressive people. I didn't quite read up. I mean, I still have to read a lot about him. I didn't quite read how he ended up traveling in those paths, like how he got, Kennedy and Picasso and whoever else he...
Well, it could have been family connections, or that he was... Maybe we are missing part of the history where he did have enough notoriety as an artist to be able to travel. I'm just wondering if the Kennedy pictures was travel to France, if it was the family going to visit with France and that to France, and that's where they
probably, because I don't think he left France that often.
Yeah,
from what I know.
But the thing about the Kennedy picture too is it looks a little posed. The one woman that's sitting beside,
she's very much.
She's and the hair, the wind's blowing through her hair, and then there's a young lady kind of looking back over her shoulder at the camera. It's a very live, again, timeless image. Like it's right there.
Well, especially that woman at the bottom looking back at the camera. There's something like if she wasn't there, I don't know if it'd have the same kind of energy. But,
I think you're right.
I think you're right. I think the people are aware of the cameras, but that's that crowd. They're out there to look good. And I mean, he 1953. I don't know if he was. He wasn't a senator yet, was he? Kennedy in the early 50s.
I don't know. I'm not.
Know. But he was somebody. I mean, obviously he's there. In the. In Lartigue's camera view. I mean, I don't think I'll ever get to knob around with anybody like Kennedy and have pictures in the future of him. But then he goes into doing his color work, which I think he's also doing when he's young as well, because his parents again are well means, and he can buy all this kind of camera equipment that will let him do color pictures. And the first color shots he was doing was something called an autochrome process.
Right.
Do you know about that? Can you explain
a little
that?
bit? It's complicated. It's I believe it's done with 3 plates and 3 filters, a red, a green, and a blue, or whatever the 3 primary colors. And the emulsion is made with potato starch.
Potato starch, yeah.
And
so if you're stuck in the forest, you could eat your plates.
Or you'd be out there licking the emulsion off the... I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
Yeah.
So when you I don't know if you project them, you just put the plates together and shine light through it, and you get this color image. But it must have been magic. I mean, you think of early, like 1912 or whenever. I don't know when the process was invented, but it must have been stunning to see these color images, grainy as though they might have been.
Right. I'm not sure it's the first color process, but it's certainly one of the first. Color processes. And I mean, the same kind of experience that we all had when we went from film to digital and we're looking at the back of the camera, like whatever that magic is in photography. Yeah. It's there, looking at these. And these autochrome pictures that he's got, I mean, he's no longer photographing motion as much because the autochrome is too slow to be able to capture anything. So he's got everybody sort of, now he's got a woman in a go-kart and she's just sitting there and the go-kart's not moving. And I don't know what kind of exposure times he had on this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and then he's got the glider. He's got the glider guys, but they're all just sort of posed in front of the glider.
Yeah.
And the thing about this, in order to equate this, how do we, in modern terms, like you would say it's very noisy. The pictures are very noisy. And there's a lot of red, green, well, they're not really technically red. But let's say red, green, and blue pixely kind of things in it. And but there's a real ethereal look to the Autochrome image. And, I think we look back at it and we say, oh, how quaint that is and how beautiful it is. And he's looking at it, way back when and saying, this is freaking fantastic.
Yeah.
And just like you said, I can imagine going from I remember when I only could shoot black and white film because that's all I could afford. And when I could finally afford to shoot color, slides, it was like, I can't wait or when I had a black and white television. That's why I grew up with a black and white television.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And when I could finally watch Star Trek in color, or that show, what was that show? UFO, right? Did you ever see that show?
Oh yeah.
And the women on Moon had purple hair. I know that. The Jerry Anderson show. But I think they were mainly counting that people would be looking at black and white. Anyway, I'm going all over the place. But I remember that feeling. Like, I can't wait to have color. So these pictures are quite, I don't know what to say about them. I mean, they are beautiful. The technique is, they're snapshotty life kind of shots, and you can see that he's exploring something new, but he can't quite get his, he can't quite stop motion with it.
No, but he's still capturing the lifestyle. He still has cooperative subjects. He's doing the best with what he's got. I was going to step back for a second there and talk about color. When you start shooting slide film and experiencing color, you think you've mastered black and white, whatever that means. And then you go to color, and then particularly with slides, you're going, oh, I have to start again. That's what happened to me. Right. And I think that's one thing I could imagine going on in his mind. Now he's gone to color and he's lost some speed, and it's a slower, more complicated process. And I can just imagine him going, I had all these living images in black and white, and now I have these static images. So it would have been interesting if we could find an interview or a write-up on him about what his experience was starting to shoot color. I think it would be fascinating.
So speaking about his color images, I got the book. I'm looking through it, and one of the things I'm noticing, at least in a lot of his later color pictures, and I don't know if they did this on purpose when they were making the show, but he seems to have some sort of attraction to the color red. There's almost not every shot, but there's I got the shot of I don't know, this is probably in the 60s, I think he took her, in the late 50s, shot of a building with a shadow of a palm tree, and inside is his companion wearing a red hat in this little dark window. And then a patisserie in somewhere in France, and there's these children standing in front of it, and there's a window, and there's a woman standing in the doorway, and she's got a red scarf on, or something like that.
Yeah, everyone else is in white. The whole scene is dominated by white.
Yeah, and then another shot, again, a wall with a shadow of a church on it, and another shadow of a building, and in a sliver of light, there's this woman walking, and she's wearing a red sweater.
Yeah.
And then the last one, there's endless examples, but this last one I thought was really interesting. It's a woman in a pool swimming topless or naked, and she's sort of staring up at the sky, and her hair's in water, and her lips are red, right?
Red,
lipstick. So I don't know if this was on purpose. I don't know if it was something that was subliminal, or they were just, when they were looking through the archives to pull out pictures, someone who was putting the show together decided that, they were going to highlight this kind of stuff. But even his earlier, some of his other color pictures, red is predominant in a lot of the shots.
Yeah, I'd agree.
The shot of his, his companion in what looks like a kitchen or something like that, and there's a red curtain behind her. Mm-hmm. It's a great picture. It's actually one of my favorite of the color shots, with all these Venetian blinds creating shadows on her. Yeah, so, I don't know what's going on with him in these shots. He's, again, capturing these little slices of life now in color. Do you think he's doing everything very deliberately? Do you think he knows what he's doing, or is he snapshotting, or is he?
I think the later stuff, he seems to really definitely he's considered about what he's doing. The earlier stuff, I think he he was able to practice enough that he had a lot of good fortune, and the more you practice, the more fortune you get. And I think, some of this later stuff, like this one that you're talking about, the woman in the chair with the red and white curtains behind her and the Venetian blinds, it's like editorial work for a magazine, for instance.
Right.
It's like a pro photographer model shoot almost.
He did commercial work, but he only, really started doing it a lot later in life, right? A lot more.
Yeah.
I got really inspired by that. The whole story, and we're already at about an hour, so I kind of want to wrap it up a little bit. There's probably so much more we could talk about him, but his sort of life trek, he starts off early in love with photography and gets discovered later in life, and he lives until he's like 92 or something like that. So he lived a really long life. And his path for photography is really nice. And I love to see that, like, he became kind of famous in his 60s or 70s and, got his show in the museum. So I always like to think, like, I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, there's always hope for me.
Well, also, too, that for you and I, especially, connection to childhood photography, right? I like that. The pictures that I took when I was 11 are nothing like what he was getting.
No, yeah.
But that whole kind of experience of the magic of it early on, and keeping to do it, and becoming the family photographer. Oh, you got to come take pictures of this, or some birthday cake or whatever. There's always one of us in the family that does that, and you can relate to him that way by his story, and you can certainly relate to his subjects by the way he captured them. He's amazing dude.
Yeah, and the one, as you were mentioning this, the thing that popped in my head today was you and me, we grew up in a certain time, and photography was sort of an evolution. We started with these little cameras, and we worked our way up to where we are now. This is going to sound like old man yelling at clouds or get off my grass kind of thing. Kids are growing up with cameras pretty much right in their hands once they can start grabbing things. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, is that magic then lost? Like, for me, photography was really this great evolution, and it was magical, and it still is. It still pulls me along as this thing that, is a very, very privileged. I feel, you know what I'm talking about, all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then kids, as they're everybody's growing up with a phone, right, in their hands. I'm not making any judgments about that, but they have cameras built into it. And so right away, they're understanding. And they're being photographed all the time, too, by their parents who have the same devices. So I wonder if some of that is lost now with the way things are going.
Yeah, lost, maybe displaced for me would be, because the kids nowadays... The kids nowadays, they use Snapchat and Instagram as methods of communicating with each other.
Now. It's not
yeah, and that's fine. I think I'm okay with that. It's just, sometimes great stuff comes out of it, usually not, but that's just my point of view. But yeah, they're using it as a form of communication, and I think there's the odd kid who goes through the Instagram stream and finds something. Wait a sec, this is really cool. Someone stood and took a picture of this, I don't know, the Statue of Liberty at sunrise or whatever the subject is, and going, wait a second, there's something else going on. And I think every now and then you do get kids who maybe they start with the iPhone and another smartphone, and they go around and do an artistic try and produce some kind of art out of it.
So their path is different. It'll lead to the same thing, the magic and love of photography, and pull them along. It's just, and they can't help it now. They're surrounded with images and visuals all the time. And so, unlike Lartigue, who, photography is something less than 100 years old when he was? Yeah, it was, it was a little bit more than that. No, 1840. Yeah.
And with the displacement comes a generational thing where if we were older, we could reflect a lot on what we created too. Like we would, I would shoot during the week, or on Friday night, I would, develop the roll of film, or sometimes Saturday, and wait for it to dry, wait for the negative to dry, and then print on Saturday night and Sunday night. And there was that stretching out of the drawing out of the process, that it became a reflection. And I think it even though it did really me no good at all in terms of being an artist when I was a teenager, there was you learn how to look at negatives, you learn how to look at prints, you learn how to get rid of your defects, and there's a craft to it that I think if you're on a phone, you're not really exposed. I keep using that word, but you're not really confronted with some of the, I don't know, arduousness of a mechanical or chemical process.
Well, this is probably this was always the inevitable end, and the way photography was going to evolve. I mean, it was always going to go from a Lartigue style, Matthew Brady style, or whatever gear and whatever to where we are now. And who knows what it's going to be, in another 20 years. This was the path that it was always going to be. So.
And it's what we wanted too. Like one of the reasons why I don't do film anymore is not because I don't dislike it. I love it. I mean, Mark took me to the dark room at the Alberta College of Art over here, and I could smell the chemicals again, and it was a nostalgic rush. But I would have killed to have a contrast slider instead of. Filters and try this and then doing this and then, now I got dust on it. Now I got to go back and do it again.
Hey,
all that kind of stuff.
Hey, you kids, you really aren't missing anything.
No, you're not.
And we're not.
But it was just sort of like, and it inflated the value once you finally got the good print.
Yeah, no, because
don't you know how hard I worked for this damn thing,
Right, because we climb the mountain, but we fall down a few times and we keep getting up there. Right now, you just float to the top there. But it'll be interesting to sort of revisit this, not maybe us, in like 40 or 50 years and see what people will be talking about, in terms of digital and photography evolution. So I think we barely scratched the surface with this guy. But
I know.
Yeah, I know, right? I wanted to get this out as a feeler for people to go and explore this guy's work and read about him. It's like these are the people who, I hate to say this is so cliche, but we're standing on the shoulders of these guys. But what's great about Lartigue's work, and I'm sure other people will come across in the future, is that, they have the same struggles as we did, photographically, and you can see their lifestyle, the life that they're living, is very much relatable, I think, to where we are now. And that's a lot of the fun I've had with deep dives in my photographers, like realizing how much of a human being they are and relatable. So I like doing that. I'm really happy that you were willing to spend your evening with me.
Me too. No, it's great. We got to do it in person one of these days.
That's true. Yes. We'll meet up someplace halfway, maybe. Or you wanted to come out to New York, right?
No, I'm coming out to New York one of these days. Yeah.
That's great. We'll find you a place to stay. I wish you could stay here, but it's a mess. No, anyway, so hey, Ward, where can people who are listening look for your work and find out where you are?
You just look for my name, Ward Rosin, WARDROSIN, on Facebook. I'm the only one there. I'm Ward Rosin Fine Art on Instagram, and have a website that's sort of falling into neglect, but Mark and my book, Between Dust and Sky, is still available for sale at rosin.ca, rosin.ca. It's our website, or my website, and that's about it. Right. If you search for me, you'll find me, without a doubt.
All right. Oh, what was I going to say? Well, never mind. Now I'm getting.
How do we find you on the internet?
Well, you were saying the website is in a little disarray. So is my website. The Switch to Manual website is not really working too much, but my website, amrosario.com, you can go up there. I still haven't put my galleries up there yet, so I'm working on that. And you can find also me on Twitter at amrosario. I'm on Instagram at amrosario. And what else? Yeah, look for me there. And look, if you subscribe to the show via iTunes, if you guys can give me ratings and thumbs up or anything like that to help get the show out there, let people know that this exists, I would really like that. That would be probably one of the best things that people could do. So what else? I think that's it. Keep it short and sweet. Ward.
And go
ahead. Sorry.
I got to say about, because I subscribe to Street Shots, when this episode comes up in the queue and I'm on the train going into work and it's me talking to me. It's very surreal, man.
Do you have a message for your future self?
To my future self? No, just that confirming this is weird.
Okay, this is weird. This is how we'll end it. It is very weird. This is why I don't listen to my show. Anyway, Ward, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, as always, my friend.
All right, and I'll talk to you guys later. See you in May, and adios.